finding housing for black players is difficult. Many stay at the YMCA as an option.
The Civil Rights Act changed everything, but it didn't take effect in 1968. You could walk up to a guy and say, I saw him ad in the paper, and he said, we don't rent to blacks.
Lombardi was so strong. If he ever felt that anybody was being mistreated in the way of housing or anything like that, he would call them on it.
We rented a house because the landlady had gotten an argument with her neighbors and said, I'll get even with you, I'm gonna rent to blacks.
He made some moves on landlords that never got publicized, but the landlords either behaved or lost their customer.
At the time, because of the Jim Crow laws, they had white and black hotels.
They were playing in the South. Lombardi housed them at a Fort Benning, at a military institution, so that those black players wouldn't have to stay somewhere else.
It was certainly another example of his sensitivity to diversity and that all his players would be treated equally.
Because Lombardi had experienced discrimination on his own by being Italian, he was more open-minded and more supportive of the African-American players.
When you talk about the problems of the African Americans in the white community, it was almost the same as the problems for Italian in New York.
He felt at various times that because he was not only Italian, but Southern Italian and dark-skinned Italian, that he was being discriminated against.
He felt he did not get the head coaching position in New York because of the fact that he was Italian.
He said, I think it's because my last name ends in an I.
He was very sensitive to that. He also had a gay brother, and I'm sure that he witnessed the prejudice that he had been subjected to.
Lombardi was decades ahead of most other people in sports on issues of gender and sexuality.
He wasn't going to let anybody discriminate against his players.
There were like 7 or 8 places in town where African-American ball players were not accepted, and Vince heard about it.
Lombardi went to those places and said, if I hear you discriminate against any of my players, you're off limits for the entire team.
He let the fans know right then and there, we don't tolerate that.
For Coach Lombardi to leave the Giants, the biggest city in America, to go to farmland is an improbable story. And for him to succeed in the way he did and to do it with the kinds of players that he put together.
Here I was, 22 years old, from College Park, Georgia, had never been in a huddle with an African American. I wanted to be accepted, but I didn't know how. The intimidation factor was exponentially increased because of this tension I felt about the race thing. The most intimidating of them all was Willie Davis, the defensive captain, who was working on his master's degree in business and shattered every racist stereotype that I had learned. He changed my life because I was never able to look at another human being, any human being, in the same way I had.